Good morning and welcome to the Windows Virtual Desktop webinar this morning. My name is John Gorton. I'm going to present the agenda and then we'll move on to some of my colleagues to cover off some other bits. I'll cover off the agenda in 1 second. During the webinar, you'll all be muted, but there is a questions box on the right-hand side of your screen, which we'll cover a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please do add your questions as we go through. The webinar itself will be recorded and we'll make that available to you along with a copy of the slides. And can I ask at the end of the webinar to complete the critique form so that we can gain your feedback. So we're going to cover through what is Windows Virtual Desktop, and how your business can benefit from WVD. We'll hand over to one of my colleagues to cover off the third-party end-user computing solutions that complement WVD, such as VMware and Citrix. Then I'll talk through the licensing considerations and the business case for WVD, and then we'll move on to our quick start program to help you get started with the proof of concept. So I'll now hand over to Brandon, who'll talk through what is Windows Virtual Desktop.
Hi, John. Thank you very much. So I'm Brandon Pierce. I'm a customer solution specialist here at Bytes with a focus on Azure. Today, I'm going to walk you through Microsoft's Windows Virtual Desktop solution on Azure. WVD offers a fully managed desktop virtualization solution in the cloud. So why desktop virtualization? It's often considered a solution for enabling central management and security of a user's desktop with less IT management overhead. This allows you the separation of your operating system, data, and apps from your local hardware, instead running them on a remote server. The main appeal is that you can separate the compute environment from the user devices. This greatly reduces the risk of confidential information being left on a personal device. Why WVD? Traditional desktop virtualization environment is often prohibitively expensive, technically complex. A successful implementation can take weeks or months to complete. Often a user experience may lack the productivity of a locally provisioned desktop. Windows Virtual Desktop removes all that complexity. Windows Virtual Desktop provides that back-end infrastructure as a fully managed service. This includes all of those traditional roles like the gateway, broker, diagnostics, load balancing, etc. Compared to an on-premise solution, you benefit from the immense capacity of Azure without having to worry about deploying and maintaining that back-end infrastructure and roles. You still retain the full control over your VMs and operating system images that you use within the solution. You can use pre-built images within Azure or create your own custom images. You can choose to deploy a fully virtualized desktop or a virtualized app, or both. And that can be consumed by any device. Remote apps on a Windows 10 client, they integrate seamlessly. You can pin them to your local taskbar or start menu. The only indication that it is a remote app is a glyph on the actual app icon. They look and behave like local apps. With FS Logics, the experience of working with stateful applications in VMs is painless. FX Logics allows the user profile to be containerized on a separate virtual disk, which is attached to the WVD session when the user logs in. To the user, it will look and feel like their files and inbox and other apps are running from the local C drive, even though they may be using a different VM since they last connected. The separation of the user profile from the virtual machine using FS Logics helps reduce the overall data storage footprint and costs without compromising on performance or app compatibility. With OneDrive's integration, files on demand is supported and benefits from FS Logics. You have full access to your OneDrive files, including files on demand, which are available and usable right away. Rehydration of those files on demand will seem immediately due to that high-speed network within the Microsoft Cloud. Known folder move can silently synchronize those known locations, such as documents, pictures, desktop, to a user's OneDrive account. That helps keep that sense of persistence between those sessions. OneDrive can help reduce those overall running costs by reducing the storage consumed by the WVD solution. Identity is obviously key to the user experience and protecting your data. With Azure Active Directory provides a secure, consistent sign-on experience for those users, no matter what device they use. It ensures that only the right people have access to the data and your apps. You can configure multi-factor authentication and conditional access as required. This allows you to control the access based on who the user is, what device they're using, their location, etc. Azure Active Directory also allows you to manage those admin privileges with role-based access controls and govern your Azure resources. It's often used if you already have Azure or Office 365, you already have Azure AD, and you can sync that with your local on-premise directory service if you need. It's also possible to bind your VMs in the solution to an existing Active Directory. The user would then log into the WVD service using their Azure AD credentials, and then they may be prompted for the Active Directory credentials. In those scenarios, we would usually recommend running a domain controller in Azure. A session host is a virtual machine within the WVD environment. You can assign multiple users to a single VM with either a Windows desktop or Windows Server operating system. With a multi-user model, you can deploy a VM with enough CPU and RAM to support several users on a single virtual machine. This can help reduce your overall resource requirements while still providing that great user experience. A host pool is a collection of these session host VMs. A host pool can be tailored to a specific group of users, for example, a department or a particular workload. If you have a group of users who need more performance, such as a creative team, then you may select a host pool that has a VM with a size with additional RAM, CPU, and maybe even fast GPUs to meet those user requirements. Another set of users may be part of a host pool which has a lower spec VM for running those less intensive applications. This allows you to keep your cost to a minimum while still maintaining and providing a great user experience to different groups of users. WVD provides options to load balance users across virtual machines in those host pools. For best performance, you can configure breadth mode, which allows you to evenly allocate users across those VMs in the pool. For example, if you have 4 VMs in the host pool, the first 4 users will be allocated each to an unused VM, and the next user would share a VM with a 4th user, so on. Depth modes allows you to optimize for cost. Basically, it will fill up a VM until a threshold is met, and then it'll start using the next VM. Scaling tools built into the solution configure to automate provisioning of additional VMs as needed, based on a threshold that is met to support demand. When demand is low, the number of VMs can be reduced to keep your costs to a minimum. When there's no anticipated demand, like out of hours, then you can turn off all VMs. So that was a quick technical overview of Windows Virtual Desktop on Microsoft Azure. WVD provides significantly more functionality that I've briefly described. I'll now hand over to my colleague, Bruce Knight.
Thanks, Brandon. So hi, everyone. My name's Bruce Knight. I'm a Cloud Solutions Specialist here at Bytes as well, and I'm going to be taking you through some of the business benefits of WVD. So traditionally, there have been 2 options for virtualizing Windows. Number 1, provide Windows Server OS and access it through remote desktop. This option has the advantage of being highly scalable and efficient, but typically does not provide a true Windows 10 experience. Or you could run Windows 10 Enterprise OS on a dedicated virtual machine. This option has the advantage of providing a full Windows 10 experience, optimized for the cloud, but only in a one-to-one virtual machine to user ratio. It could be expensive and, of course, hard to scale. WVD brings the best of these two options together, with Windows Virtual Desktop users benefiting from a full Windows 10 experience deployed in a highly scalable Azure environment. The multi-session capability allows multiple users on the same virtual machine and helps keep the costs down. So if we have a look at some of the virtualization scenarios, more secure access to data and organizational resources, compliance with industrial regulations, examples, financial services, healthcare and government, an increasingly elastic workforce for mergers and acquisitions, or being able to quickly spin up some workstations to support short-term employees, contractors, or even provide partner access. Employee-specific needs could be, BYOD or mobile staff, and giving them the ability to access their workstation securely on the device of their choice, and even, potentially for call centers or branch workers. Some of the specialized workloads like design and engineering and legacy app software, you could take advantage of the GPU acceleration and video encoding technology to support those types of users in the Azure WVD environments. Naturally, WVD is the best virtual desktop and app experience delivered on Azure. Some of the reasons why: it's the only multi-session Windows 10 client experience delivered on shared VMs. It's optimized for Office 365 Pro Plus and some Teams enhancements coming soon as well. Microsoft Office applications are some of the, most highly used and most commonly virtualized applications for any business. And therefore, poor email client performance is one of the top issues preventing many enterprises from fully adopting non-persistent virtual desktop models. For admins, the various workarounds to this problem can often result in increased server virtualization or utilization, increased costs, and ongoing poor and inconsistent performance for end users. And as Brandon mentioned earlier, FS Logic's Office 365 Pro Plus enables faster load time for user profiles in Outlook and OneDrive. So Microsoft takes care of the control plane and hopefully keeps its service up and running for you. Most enterprise customers already have the licenses they need for it as well. And if you still have Windows 7 in your environment, you can move them into Azure and take benefit from free ESU or extended security updates. So you get all the benefits of Microsoft's cloud scale, including high availability, scalability, security, and privacy at a reduced cost. WVD is designed for customers to bring desktops to cloud, and the services, only going to get better and better, and as they bring more innovations to this platform. Of course, the more obvious virtualization benefits would still apply. Things like being able to connect from your device anywhere. The experience on Mac and other OSs are pretty much indistinguishable from native. It also improves business continuity. So for example, the situation that most of us are in today, you would not be constrained by the limitations of your corporate infrastructure. And then, the obvious one, lowering hardware costs. Your storage and processing needs are taken care of by the Azure cloud environment. So, the actual hardware you're using to access those desktops can have limited specification since it's being used for access only. So just to reiterate some of those enhanced security features with Azure and Microsoft 365 integration, there's 3 security advantages which belong to the WVD service alone. The attack surface is reduced by using reverse connect technology. So essentially that means, there's no open inbound ports to VMs, so there are fewer places to leave you vulnerable to attack. So, stopping the bad guys from getting in. The ability to define role-based access means you can parse out administration tasks and also protect the most sensitive user groups and workloads through MFA and conditional access. And of course, importantly, user sessions are isolated, even in multi-session environments. So I guess you're still not sure if WVD is right for you. You can take the self-assessment. There's a couple of questions below, and I think we'll be sharing these slides at a later date. So if your answer is yes to some of these questions, then potentially a good idea to start looking into investing into WVD. And with that, I'll hand over now to Peter, who will take you through some of the EUC features and capabilities.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Ely. I'm the EUC practice lead at Bytes. So what I'm going to be able to take you through briefly this morning is just how you might consider how WVD could be scaled and managed efficiently for your environments as you try and integrate that either from a hybrid or a purely native public cloud environment. As we've been able to see already, WVD has some great features. It's got all of the features you'd expect to see from an environment that has a public cloud secure and scalability feature set that you expect to see from a public cloud. And that's not all. Obviously, we've been able to see the Windows 10 multi-session, the extended support for Windows 7, and this is bringing some real efficiencies to the way that you can scale and really understand what your outgoing costs would look like from managing multiple Windows 10 sessions in an environment to support VDI. And as it's Azure, it's robust, it's secure, it provides all the advantages of scalability you'd expect. So it's very, very good from that perspective. What Microsoft are very open and honest about is that they're by no means VDI experts. Although they have provided some hugely impressive platform and a mechanism to enable to support these remote workloads through VDI, there is additional value that administrators running larger VDI deployments will find a lacking from the WVD native experience. So you'll need to consider how this environment will function for larger scale VDI deployments. And I'll go on to show you what those options are. Going forward, you really have probably three options. If I just, and that's purely from a management point of view. John is going to be taking us through how to get perhaps deployed onto WVD very, very quickly and efficiently with Bytes. But from a management point of view, these are still very important aspects. So moving forward from a management point of view, you still would have to just manage the environment using a command line interface, which would require PowerShell scripting knowledge and following the online guides to make sure that all of those scripts are completely being run correctly and efficiently. There's no UI, there's no ability to manage those images efficiently, and anyone who's run a VDI environment will know there are limitations if that's something that you haven't got as a feature. What Microsoft have done is they've partnered with some tier 1 vendors, Citrix and VMware, in order to provide an overlay platform. So what Citrix and VMware are able to do, and I'll go into this in more detail, is really make it a far easier feature-rich environment where WVD is used as the back-end platform, but your Citrix and VMware front-end features are still there for you to be able to utilize. And there is another option as well available where a number of ISV partners have been selected by Microsoft to work on this platform. Cloud Jumper being one of them, where a front-end user interface provides immediate value in that it's able to really make the native Microsoft WVD environment immediately easier to use by using that native tool set that it's got. It's got a very friendly UI where you can do a lot of image management, image backups. You can do auto scaling, and there's a number of other features that really, from a tool set, it would really pay for itself in terms of what value you would get from that UI. The partnership with VMware and Citrix that Microsoft have got in place is really adding features that is incredibly beneficial, especially if you have an existing investment with one of these partners. So if, for instance, you've got a Citrix environment already, you're able to really leverage that investment that you have on-prem by creating a truly hybrid cloud rather environment where you're able to make sure that if you want to persist using your existing VDI workloads on-prem, but take advantage of the WVD platform as well, you can then manage that from one central engine. And Citrix and VMware have worked collaboratively with Microsoft to make sure that that is a feature. And of course, VMware and Citrix have got those image management, the auto scaling functionality that comes with these features as well, that when you're running anything in cloud, you really need to start thinking about as a serious subject. Auto scaling especially is something that isn't provided by Microsoft out the box with WVD. So your virtual machines are just going to continue running and running and running. And if you're not keeping an eye on idle sessions and disconnected sessions, you're getting charged for essentially workloads that aren't being used. So VMware and Citrix have got the capability to make sure that those idle sessions and disconnected sessions are scaled back and you're not being charged unnecessarily. That's really important in the cloud. Of course, there's other features as well. The management tools that come with controlling sessions and assisting end users is there. Then you don't have to deal with all the PowerShell commandlets to control functionality. You've got an end user experience that is really important to consider as well. So especially when you're using various clients out there in the field, you've got a real rich client support for all of those endpoints. And it's going to be a rich user experience for the end users if you use VMware or Citrix, because they'll be using a different protocol to the Microsoft version that goes through the Azure data plane. So that UDP protocol that Citrix or VMware will be using is a lot more robust than the TCP protocol that Microsoft will be using through WVD, and it's optimized for streaming. So you're going to have a better experience, and that's where you'll see better usage of those things on the right there, like Teams and Office 365. And of course, there's other management tools that are also built into these feature sets, things like the personalization management. So we've highlighted how FS Logics is really helping with the optimization of Office 365 and OneDrive within the desktop environment. Well, what these tools can really do is really enhance that even further, creating more robust feature sets by creating more personalization around the desktop. So these are all sorts of things that are just worth considering before you start scaling out WVD even further. It's a great platform, as we've seen, but it's just really important to consider how these other features from VMware Horizon and Citrix and the data plane that they are operating with Microsoft can really add additional value to the WVD platform. Just to conclude on this piece, it's really how Bytes can assist is we offer a free workspace advisory service. So if you are considering WVD native, then we'd be happy to offer you a free engagement where we can give you the advice that's completely independent and provides you with a report at the end that's tailored to your needs, and will give you the confidence that you'll be able to really move forward with a solution like WVD, and whether you'd actually need something else like Citrix or a VMware Horizon solution in place, whether that's absolutely necessary or not, whether you could actually get away with just using the PowerShell scripts, how it would integrate, what the connections you are going to need to use. We're really able to give you that complete holistic view by engaging on this advisory service. So let us know if that's something you'd like to take advantage of with Bytes. Okay, I'll hand over now to John Galton, who's going to be able to take you through some of the cost considerations.
Thanks, Peter. So in terms of licensing, the good news is many of you are already licensed to access Windows Virtual Desktop. So if you're a Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 customer, or the education equivalent, or Microsoft 365 F3, which has just been renamed to F1, you'll see an announcement coming out on that very shortly. You have the rights to access Windows Virtual Desktop. Equally, if you're just a Windows 10 Enterprise E3 or E5, if you've got licenses for those or VDA, without having to have the full M365 suite, then again you've got access to Windows 7 or Windows 10 in running in Azure. On the server side of things, if you want to run kind of RDS in Windows Virtual Desktop, you need to have remote desktop services client access licenses with active software assurance. And again, those provide rights to access WVD. You don't need to have RDS cows to access Windows 10 or Windows 7 virtual desktops. So once you've got the licenses to provide you with the access rights, what happens is you spin up the environment in Azure, and effectively you only pay for the virtual machines, the storage and networking that you consume within Azure as an Azure service. You have the ability to pick whatever size VMs are most appropriate to you, and obviously the different storage types. With regards to the server VMs running in Azure, you can reserve those for either a 1 or 3 year via reserved instances. The benefit of doing that over pay-as-you-go is because you can, committing to Microsoft for a 1 or 3 year period, they give you quite a significant discount on those. So up to 72%. So by pre-committing, there are cost savings to be made there. As I'm sure you're all aware, Windows 7 support ended on the 14th of January this year. There were a couple of options, one of which was move to Windows 10, so do an upgrade, deploy Office 365 Pro Plus within that desktop. Some customers aren't able to do that, and one of the options Microsoft have provided is to move those Windows 7 desktops into WVD, and they've committed to provide you with 3 years worth of extended security updates, free of charge for desktops, Windows 7 desktops running in Azure. So, like I say, it's free of charge. It's definitely worth considering. The cost of the extended security updates is quite significant to apply those to your on-premises local deployments of Windows 7. So it's certainly something to consider there. So we've come up with a quick start engagement. So it's a two-day engagement through Bytes, where we'll agree on a Windows Virtual Desktop configuration with you. We'll get that set up. So you engage our Azure experts on that. Once that's in place, that's, like I say, 2 days from agreeing the configuration through to providing you with a Windows Virtual Desktop for you to start testing. The cost of that is just £2,000. If we need to move on to a further wide-scale deployment, there are funding options from Microsoft, depending on customer type, customer size, and whether you're a managed account or not. So certainly something we can look to Microsoft to help fund, and that will result in a wide-scale deployment of either Windows 7 or Windows 10 desktops in WVD with Office 365 Pro Plus if you've got the licensing rights to do that. Just to add, one of the benefits of the licensing of Windows 10 and Office 365 Pro Plus is the fact that they're licensed on a per user basis. So it doesn't matter what type of device you're accessing the Windows Virtual Desktop from, you've got the rights to do that, and it doesn't call against one of the kind of 5 licensing limitations that you have with Office 365 Pro Plus. So £2,000, quick start, 2-day engagement to get you up and running. So it's certainly worth having a look at. We'll now move on to a Q&A session. I do believe there has been a few questions. So Cassie, if you could read those out, and hopefully we'll all be able to answer those.
Yeah, thanks, John. I'm just going to pull up the questions box now. I know a few of you had a fair few questions as we were going through the content. So if I go back, so I think Brandon, from around roughly when you were presenting, someone's asked, is single sign-on possible from WVD portal to the desktop, or is it always prompted for credentials when logging onto the desktop?
In my experience, it's usually prompted at the desktop at this point in time. I know they are doing some work to make sure that that works, but it depends on your environment and your Azure Active Directory account details to make sure that they marry up.
Okay, great. Thank you. Someone else has asked, is it possible and how easy would it be to migrate my current on-premise RDS environment to WVD? I don't know if that's one for Brandon or Bruce, possibly.
I'll take that. It's very simple. It's literally just lifting and shifting the VMs pretty much into the cloud. You can then take advantage of FS Logics if you need to. There might be a little bit of configuration to optimize purely for WVD, but in reality, it's a lift and shift of the VM and then just using those session hosts as new session hosts in WVD.
Okay, great. Someone's asked, how does a Mac keyboard layout map to a Windows desktop? Is there a Mac keyboard layout available? Probably
As
for Brandon or Bruce.
Yeah, as a former Mac user, there are some issues with the Mac keyboard because it's not a standard ISO layout. So if you've had slight issues with a Mac keyboard in the past, by default, the Mac keyboard will still have those same issues when you connect into it doesn't make a difference which technology you use to connect into a Windows machine, you'll still have those same issues. In the past, as a workaround, I've created custom keyboard layouts for Mac users. So that is a potential option if you're willing to go to that extreme.
Okay, great, thank you. Someone has asked, can I also access my on-premise corporate folders from WVD? How would this be achieved? Yeah,
that is totally possible. You would just need to have that sort of connection between the Azure infrastructure back into your own infrastructure. So that could be a VPN gateway. If you've got ExpressRoute back to your data center, that could be an option. Obviously, you then need to make sure that you've got the routing set up and everything of that nature. But having access to on-prem systems is totally possible, the same way it would be for any other resource that you run in Azure. Same for the WVD environment.
Okay, got a couple of questions for Peter. I'm a bit confused around there being no GUI. Was that for managing Azure? I think an online interface and PowerShell scripts were optional. Am I wrong?
So there is a GUI for the Azure management of the VMs themselves. And perhaps I wasn't clear, but the actual management of how you manage those virtual desktops from a deployment angle there is no functionality other than using PowerShell today. I believe it's something that is on Microsoft's roadmap, but it is going to be, you're not going to have the features that we discussed today in terms of that true image management and the hybrid scalability that you're able to get with other features. It is going to be still that limited UI functionality.
Right, okay. And someone has said, what's your definition of large scale?
It's a good question, actually. It depends. I mean, when you consider that you're able to run, someone just had a question here about RDSH workloads, and there's plenty of people who run RDSH native in their environments, and they've got hundreds, if not 1,000 users running on these RDSH workloads fairly easily and with no problems. Whereas I've seen people who are running hundreds of workloads on RDSH, and it's been a nightmare for them, and they've had to introduce something like Citrix as an overlay in order to provide that rich user experience because of device compatibility and how it integrates with MFA, for instance. So it depends on whether it is absolutely a necessity for you, but what we're generally seeing is something around about above 200, 500 users on this platform can become a bit of a nightmare if you're starting to having to run multiple images and multiple departments, and you want to make sure that the user experience incurs no downtime for your end users when you're doing any application or image updates. You want to make sure you've got the right tool sets in place to support that. So yeah, anything around about those numbers we're seeing can become a bit of a management overhead.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to the opposite end, I suppose. Is WVD suitable for SMEs with, say, 10 or less machines?
Very much so. It's a very affordable, very affordable method, especially if you just go pure native, because more than likely you're going to have a single host pool or maybe 2 host pools, which will be very easy to manage within the environment itself. There is it is a bit more technically complex because you have to know the PowerShell stuff, and you might be referring to the docs a lot. But once you know the system, it's a very neat solution.
Mm-hmm. And Brandon, Bruce, do either of you know when will the AV redirection for Teams in WVD be released?
So yeah, I mean, I think with the HDX platform and Citrix, you can get some of those enhancements already today. With native, I haven't seen a sort of roadmap in place yet, but I think that will be available fairly soon as well. They're working hard to get that up and running. But if you have Citrix with their HDX platform, and like Peter was, I think, mentioned earlier, you can really take advantage of some of the enhanced capabilities of Teams in a VDI environment. So, increased video frame rates, I guess less network bandwidth compared to using typical USB camera redirection type technology. So they've done, I think, quite a bit there to enable that piece already, and more enhancements coming down the line.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry, we've got a fair amount of questions coming through. Some of you will come back directly just because there are quite a few, and there could be lengthy answers. Just seeing if there's any that you guys are kind of asking that are being frequently asked. Peter, there's a couple of people that have asked around VMware Horizon. So does WVD integrate with VMware Horizon on-prem or only Horizon Cloud?
No, absolutely. As VMware Horizon, the only difference is that there is a new license model that you'd need to purchase in order to support this. So there's something that's released called the Horizon Universal License, and it provides all of the features of Horizon Enterprise, but then it provides the ability to scale out into any cloud. So you could utilize WVD as one of those options.
Okay, great. I'm aware the OS drives for WVD via VMs can be encrypted, but can the FS Logics drive that holds user data be encrypted also?
I think I'm going to have to take that offline. I want to say yes, but I'm uncertain. I've never actually done it. I'll take that offline and respond to that separately if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. John, I had a question for you actually. Let me go. Can I use reserved instances to reduce the cost of user WVD?
Yeah, so when you, the Azure environment relies on Windows Server desktops in Azure. So by using RIs, you can reduce the cost of those instances.
Okay, great, thank you. How does WVD cope with legacy applications running on Windows 7 only? Brandon, Bruce, maybe?
Legacy applications, if it runs in Windows 7, it will run in WVD. It's just a Windows 7 environment, it just doesn't happen to be on a piece of hardware. So it's just going to be another instance of Windows 7. So if you can run that Windows 7 in WVD, there is the option to run any legacy applications that would run perfectly in Windows 7 on physical laptops, for example, to run within the WVD environment. In fact, Microsoft has something called Azure to make sure that all that does run consistently.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. I think they also, Microsoft have kind of, pushing customers to leverage WVD. If you still have legacy apps that only run on Windows 7, take them to WVD through Azure and run them in there. So I think it's one of the things they sort of talk about a lot to help with those extended support updates and keep you secured with security updates moving forward on those Windows 7 VMs.
Okay, great. I've got a little bit of an unusual one, but maybe either of you two might be able to help. So I work for a university and we tried to use WVD recently, but we were getting no capacity error. Is there currently an issue that you know of with creating new WVDs because of the NHS, as I read in an article?
Yes, currently across EMEA, pretty much all the since the coronavirus outbreak in the last few weeks, the capacity utilization within Azure across EMEA has increased something by 770%. So there are a few issues within EMEA with running VMs at scale. If you're looking to do a proof of concept or something like that to start with, you can run in certain US environments. There's more than adequate capacity there.
Yeah, and I think Ben, as you mentioned, NHS is priority for Microsoft at the moment for their key workers. So I guess they're prioritizing all those workloads to help frontline workers within especially NHS staff. So I guess at this time you might have some issues, but hopefully further down the line those will be alleviated.
And it also depends on the SKU of the VM that you're trying to run, and which region you're trying to run them in. So it could be that you just need to modify the SKU that you're running and maybe the region that you're running. It could be that you might be limited in UK South, but less limited in UK West. But it is likely at this point in time today that you might have a problem if you're trying to go at scale.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, if you have any issues you come across, raise it with your account manager or Bytes, and we'll obviously try and help and assist you out with that. So we'll help where we can to get you up and running.
Thanks, guys. And then I'll just read this one. For things like Teams, Zoom, and other video conferencing, can the webcam on the laptop or PC be pulled through to the WVD session?
Do you want me to answer that, guys? So, I mean, absolutely, yes, it can. The only thing I will say is that you are going to be at the mercy of what your bandwidth controls are like and what the optimization is you've got in place to support that kind of rendering. So remember, it's as I said in my bit, was about the TCP is the protocol that Microsoft will push this through the Azure plane, which isn't the greatest protocol to be using for video transfer. So if you are going to be using those in that kind of requirement in your sessions, then it might be worth considering something that's either going to optimize that workload end to end by using some kind of SD-WAN technology, or you might need to kind of think about using what we featured in this presentation, a kind of a Citrix or VMware environment that can provide a richer protocol environment experience for the end user.
Perfect, thank you. Can you connect to a WVD through a zero or thin client?
WVD supports HTML5, so if you can run a modern browser, if you have that option on your zero client, I don't believe there should be an issue. Microsoft doesn't support or may not have a native client for that device, so it might be that that device may have a client that's compatible. It would depend on the device. I'm uncertain.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it supports the HTML5, then it should work.
There's a limited number of vendors that aligned with to support this. iGel is one of them, which the iGel Linux OS does support WVD native. But again, if you're looking at zero client technology, that's quite bespoke and it has to be aligned to the protocol of the vendor that you're using. So if you're using Citrix, it would work with that. If you're using VMware Horizon, it would work with that for WVD, but you'd have to use those protocols that those vendors are specifically working with. So in Citrix's instance, it'd be HDX. In VMware's instance, it would either be PC over IP or Blast, but it'd be dependent on those vendors.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I mean, we've got a few other questions, but I think what we'll do is we'll take some of them offline. We'll come back and we'll share what the questions are with everybody and the answers, because it might be questions that you guys are thinking about anyway, but may not have asked. A few people have asked if we'll share the recording. Yes, we mentioned at the beginning we will share the recording with you, so you can play back anything you might have missed. If you've got any questions, obviously please speak to your account manager, reach out to them if you want to ask them anything directly, or you can email tellmemore@bytes.co.uk. We can always forward that on to an account manager and for them to get in touch. There'll be a very short survey will just pop up at the end, so if you guys have just like a couple of minutes to fill out a few questions, we really do appreciate your feedback. So that's all from me. Thank you everybody for joining on the session this morning, and thank you to all of the speakers for delivering their content. Anything from anyone else?
No, thank you. Stay safe.
Yes, please do. Okay, thank you everyone. Thanks for joining.